We are a class of 22 business students here at West Lothian College. It's HND level, so a lot of the students in the room today have been studying business for 3 or 4 years already, and they're all going on to study the business degree at Napier University next year. All had offers for that university, so great. And we are currently studying a sustainable development unit, and looking at the impact of human behaviour on the environment. And we've been listening to your podcast, so we're very grateful that you could join us to answer some questions that we've prepared. So I'll let you guys do a short introduction, and then I'll hand over to our first student with the question.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Fraser Harper, and my colleague in the other window is Michael Cross. We're not in the same location. We work virtually on the Green Edge. And the first thing to say is you're very welcome, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the Green Edge. You will find the Green Edge at Green Edge, that's all one word, greenedge.substack.com, and you'll find all our posts and our podcasts there. We started at the end of 2021. That's when Michael and I started working on the Green Edge. We'd been doing a lot of stuff around skills development and green skills, understanding green skills before then. But we started to blog and to podcast at the end of 2021, so kind of in the middle of COVID, with our original tagline being skills for net zero. And this was really about looking at what skills were going to be needed for net zero. I think it's fair to say that it's become, over the nearly 3.5 years that we've been doing it, it's become much more than that. It is still net zero, of course, but it's moved into this whole area of sustainability and skills and competences as part of sustainability. But alongside that, and we also take a view on the technology, the policy, the education, and everything else that's going on around this big area that we call sustainability. What that means in day-to-day terms is we read an awful lot of reports. And we've just released our what we call our digest update, which is a month's reading of reports. We read about 125. Actually, Michael reads them more than I do, to be honest. But we read about 125 reports. And we talk to a lot of people. And just to give you very quickly some recent examples, we have just talked to the co-chair of Scotland's Just Transition Commission, Professor Dave Ray, and done a special podcast episode with him. Another conversation we've just had with a couple of senior people from the Clarion Housing Group, which is the largest UK housing association. They manage something like 10,000 properties across the UK on behalf of about 360,000 residents.
125,000.
125,000. Thank you, Michael. And we were talking to them about the retrofit challenge they have, of course, which is a big one, and the opportunities that go along with it. And then just another one, last year we had a great conversation with a gentleman called Dr. Adam Reed, who was the Chief Sustainability Officer of Suez Recycling and Recovery UK. Very entertaining man and has some great insights on circular economy. So we kind of sponge this stuff up and we write and we podcast about it. And we do a lot of dot joining. And one of the things we're doing right now is to figure out what effects America's new tariff policy is going to have on the world of sustainability, but that's another conversation all in itself. So having said all of that, we'll rattle through as many of your questions as we can. Now, Romany, we've got them written down here. So do you want to ask the questions, or shall we just start with the questions as we got them in the list and then answer them?
Well, we've got the learners on standby to ask the questions. They're quite looking forward to it, if that's all right.
All right, then. And you're going to ask in the order that
yes.
you gave us them. Fine.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Let's have your first question then.
Okay, we're just passing a microphone round, so just bear with us. But here's our first one.
If the just transition is described as suboptimal or highly expensive, why is it worth it?
Why is it worth it? Yeah. Okay. Well, let me start with that one. I think the first thing to say about the just transition is it's a moral and it's a legal imperative. Governments and businesses are facing increasing pressure from things like international agreements, going from Paris onwards, legal frameworks, and public demand, it's got to be said, to act on climate change and social justice. And I think alongside that moral and legal imperative, history teaches us that if transitions, if we think of transitions that have gone on just in the UK in the past from coal, from where I come in the northeast of England, for example, and steel, and those types of transitions, if they don't take account of social equity in places like Scotland, the northeast, Sheffield, places like that, and if it doesn't take into account of social equity and the preservation of livelihoods, then individuals, communities, and even whole regions can fall into decay and actually become counterproductive to harmonious society. And, we heard this echoed when we talked to Professor Dave Ray last week. He said one thing he's learned from being with the Just Transition Commission is that if people aren't carried along with it, this thing about leave no one behind, they actually start to work against it. So they'll become counterproductive to the whole effort. So that's the kind of the moral imperative. But in terms of it being suboptimal and highly expensive, there are counter arguments, and they are that if everybody has access to the green economy, that could enable long-term economic stability. Taking away, reducing everyone's dependence on volatile fossil fuel markets, and giving a more stable and resilient economies. And there are also, finally, the environmental and the health benefits that can be argued go along with reducing emissions, mitigating climate change, improving air quality. Air quality is a big thing, and those kind of things. Okay. Next question.
Yes, hi. My question is, what are the biggest misconceptions or misunderstandings surrounding the concept of just transition?
I will present a few little thoughts on this one. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is it's to do with people in work and to do with people who are having their livelihoods challenged. And I think obviously in Scotland, the highest profile example of that at the moment is Grangemouth, whereas the just transition covers all of us in all our lives, in every aspect. So it's someone who's a homeowner or someone renting their property and the right to having a properly heated, dry home. And that building will go through a transition to people in work and people entering work as well. And so I think it is a very broad activity. And I think one of the messages came through from talking, say, to Dave Ray, was that he came to the conclusion that you've actually got to tackle poverty and inequality to really make the transition a success and make real progress. And that's where we have a lot of time for what's happening in Scotland, because you actually have a commission trying to pursue this and to shape every aspect of every policy. Whereas in England, we do not have the equivalent to that at the present time. And I think one of the other things that's very strong on the whole just transition area is that it is not possible to have a national solution. You have to have place-based solutions. And so as we've gone through devolution within the United Kingdom and also within England, we have very powerful mayors in England who are actually pursuing their own policies on this topic. And they're ensuring that their communities, and Manchester's probably the gleaming example of this, London, Liverpool and the like, are all having their own approach to the just transition. So whilst they're doing the right thing for their place, we're actually experiencing fragmentation as well across the UK because of that. And that is an issue which is recognised. And certainly it would appear that with a change of government in England or the United Kingdom, as of last July, the conversations across the borders have become much more productive on these topics, which is good.
And we do see that as being important, that for somebody, for a country like Scotland, which is leading just transition, that you're high up in that. When you look at England, us down here, we're very fragmented, and there's a lot we can learn from what's going on in Scotland. And that's I'm not saying that just because we're talking to a Scottish audience here. That answer your question? How about the next one?
Yes, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hi.
Aye.
So how can policies be designed to promote sustainable growth while minimizing environmental harm? And what role do market-based instruments like carbon pricing play in the process?
In terms of policies, economic policies, there's a carrot and a stick there, really. Certainly on the carrot side, there are elements like green investment and green incentives. So governments, UK government, Scottish government, they can fund elements like renewable energy, and we're seeing this, sustainable infrastructure, particularly the circular economy. There's a lot going around the circular economy initiatives, and offering tax incentives for green innovation. And we get involved. We're actually involved in a green innovation project right now. As a kind of a side hustle, we do some project work. And we're getting involved in money that's being offered to incentivize research into elements of green innovation. The stick side of that is regulation and standards, obviously, enforcing stricter environment regulations, efficiency standards, that ensures or pushes industries towards adopting sustainable practices without solely relying on voluntary action. And I think that's the thing. The incentives and the regulation standards have to push individuals, organizations particularly, towards going that extra mile and going into the voluntary area. When you look at the markets and carbon pricing and other market mechanisms like carbon taxes, emissions trading systems, again, it's all about encouraging businesses to internalize environmental costs and to cut emissions, invest in cleaner alternatives in those kind of areas. So the markets play a big part in that. And Michael and I have been through market cycles that have tried to incentivize businesses and have failed or have dipped and have then come again. And I think we're on a little bit of an up with carbon pricing and some of those market mechanisms now. And I think one other policy area that we would mention, we've talked about before, is just transition funding. We could envisage, for example, revenues from carbon pricing being ring-fenced, going into reskilling programs, regional development, and support for affected communities. And that would ensure economic fairness alongside sustainability. So I think there's lots of areas that can be focused on there. Whether that's being done or not, well, that's another conversation. But, you can envisage this kind of thing happening.
And I'd add two little comments there. One is the use of mandates, and you actually have a date when something will physically stop, like the transition to EVs, the actual move away to heat pumps from gas boilers and the like, which is a really fundamental piece. I think on the embedded carbon part for trade is really interesting, because with this tariff war that might break out as of tomorrow, embedded carbon is also going to be taxed as it moves across borders. So it doesn't allow you to export your pollution problems, as it were. And it is really unclear how that will be treated amongst this raft of extra charges that are rattling around the system. So I don't know if it'll scuttle it. We've done these things before with other emitted items around noxious items like nitrogen and sulfur. So I can't see why we can't do it around carbon. And I can only ever see it as a transitory thing to get us through part of a process towards 2040 to 2050. Otherwise, it becomes a soft option in some cases.
Now, just keeping a time check, we're about halfway through and we're rattling through the questions. We're on to, I think, the fourth question now. Just one point while it occurs to me. The summaries to the answers we're giving here, we've actually incorporated into this week's post, not in as much detail as we're talking, but just for reference, this week's post, which goes out 3 p.m. on Thursday. We're talking about other things, but we thought it was worth putting our brief answers to those questions in there as well. Having said that, next question.
That's great, thank you.
What do you believe the main challenges for the cities and towns in central Scotland is in comparison to the rest of Scotland?
Right.
Michael, you know Scotland very well, don't you?
Yes, I do. I lived there for a number of years. There's a big contrast between the rural issues and urban issues. And if you look at the best, I think, coverage of this in Scotland is by the Just Transition Commission. Their ranges of visits to urban areas. They did a recent one to Dumfries and Galloway. They did one to Shetland, and they also did one to Grangemouth. So in that little transect of visits, I think they have caught most of the many of the major issues there. I think if you take it on a personal basis, as it were, as a dweller, someone living, one of the big problems is the transition to electricity for heating homes. If you see that in an urban environment, you're actually seeing people switching at reasonably high cost and not necessarily winning in that equation. If you're a rural dweller, you're actually probably firing up your home with oil or other forms of energy. And the transition to electricity is much more effective. And you're getting a better deal in that sense. Where the urban areas where you've got high density of urban dwelling, you can actually go to heat networks, and that is not being properly exploited at the current time. And I think the other bit I would bring in here is that the urban discussion of the transition is the dominant discussion. The rural one is lost, even though agriculture has to go through quite a dramatic transition. And if you think of the also changes in land use, and if you take Scotland in particular, where you're going to be providing a lot of renewable energy for England, and therefore that means actually creating large scars in your landscape to build onshore wind farms and transmission lines and large hydro schemes to pump energy down your, I always regard it the Great Divide, as it were, between Highlands and the rest of Scotland. I think these issues are becoming quite contentious. And I've certainly got friends who live in the Highlands who are actively trying to reduce the impact of some of these issues. And that is by and large for urban dwellers' benefit, many of whom don't live in Scotland. And I think those tensions are there and are visible, but are not being managed from a UK point of view. And I think that is quite a big issue. And we can't let those tensions build up, because like for everybody, we got to go through our own transitions, and we need to do that equitably and share it out. And one of the key parts of that is to make it visible and transparent as to what's going on and how decisions are being made. And I think that's not totally the case at the present time.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Just before we go to the next question, Kathrin, thank you for joining us. Kathrin's just posted a chat that you may or may not see, but she said regarding sticks versus voluntary requirements, or to the previous question, some new research from PwC has revealed that the proportion of businesses committed to achieving net zero by 2030 has nearly doubled since its survey last year, rising from 28% to 47%. So it's going in the right direction. It's going in the right direction. Thank you for that. I'm sure Michael has seen that report. If not, we'll put it on our digest for next month. What's the next question?
Do you think businesses are doing enough to retain workers for green jobs, or does the government need to place more action?
I think the answer is both of those. A lot of businesses are really struggling in the face of skills gaps right now. That's what we see. They're struggling to find workers with the right skills in general, but particularly green skills. And there's a lot of confusion over what green skills actually are. You know, we talk a lot about, government particularly talks about green skills are only for green jobs. You kind of get that impression sometimes, but green skills are present in every jobs. But many companies are struggling generally to find workers with the right skills, and that limits their ability to retain staff, because staff are going on to getting onto better jobs. I've got a very good example here in where I live in Portsmouth of a sustainability officer that the local port here, Portsmouth International Port, struggled for 2 years to find one. And they found a very good sustainability officer, and within a year, she had moved on because she got a better offer elsewhere. You know, they're very a valuable resource. There's a lot of short-term versus long-term thinking, and we do see some businesses, I've got to say, particularly the public businesses, that are prioritizing immediate profits over long-term workforce development. And there is underinvestment in training and career progression for green jobs. So are they doing enough to retain? Yes, out of fear of losing them, but they could be doing more. Does the government need to take more action? Yeah, government support is absolutely crucial here. Policymakers need to provide stronger incentives. They need to do targeted funding and clearer regulations. A lot of companies are confused over what their regulations, what they are and where they're going, that help them to invest in their workforce retention and in the upskilling and reskilling effort. A lot of it is about collaboration between businesses, government, education providers, and that is needed to create clear pathways for workers, to enter and stay in green jobs. And you guys in the school there, you'll be finding that you'll be looking for your pathways, looking for your career pathways, and it's very important that they are made clear.
I'd add two little comments to that. If you look at the offshore wind industry, and the cycle time of putting an installation into place is 7 to 10 years, you'll find that they actually work across the whole of the supply chain. And therefore, they've got the cooking time. They can see the horizon of actually their requirement in skills terms to build the various component parts of making up a wind farm. And I think they have actually done a lot of good things in doing that. And they work across the whole supply chain. And therefore, it isn't fragmented. Second point I'd make is the fragmentation of the skills system, north and south of the border and across the UK, is quite significant and causing dislocations. If you're running a business across the whole of the UK, you're having to address skills issues in different ways. And my third little point will be about not paying certain people enough money. And that would be for planners in local authorities. Local authorities employ enough planners and they have enough capacity if they could retain the staff that are trained in urban planning. Unfortunately, they get pinched by the PwCs of this world and other consultancies, and therefore they are the growing ground happens in the local authorities, and then they move on. And I think that is a real issue that needs to be intervened with, because planning is a big topic, and we're talking about moving to a more centrally driven planning system that still requires professional expertise at a local area across the whole of the UK to manage those issues and to make sure the compliance actually takes place. So it's a real problem, that. But overall, the skill system is too clunky. The transmission of messages between what is the emerging demand and what should curriculum be and what qualifications should be is not a smooth process. The fleet of foot people are universities by and large, because they are their own regulators with inverted commas. I know there's an outside body that comes into it, but they can create degree programs and master's programs at speed, and also professional development programs very, very quickly when these meet demands. It is much more difficult as you move down the education system for that to take place. If you're in a college, very rarely do you have your own resources and capacity and funding to make those local decisions unless you can pool demand and really plan with relationships locally. It's where the mayors in England have played a fundamental role in forcing those groupings together to make things happen. Scotland, I think, has got some good systems in place with Skills Development Scotland, but it's a different approach than occurs south of the border.
Okay, on to the $6,000 question.
So when do you guys believe that Scotland will become net zero? Do you think it's going to be pushed back further, or do you think it will be met ahead of schedule?
And the first thing I think we have to say is, we've got to be very careful how we answer this one. we can't be too drawn. But Michael, you've got some thoughts on that one, I know.
I think we need to split this into two. I think Scotland, there's a good chance it will hit net zero by the late 2040s. My concern is the rest of the world won't actually keep up with where Scotland might get to. And I was reading a series of internal bank documents about future forecasts, and they are starting to promote adaptation ahead of mitigation. And therefore, they're promoting the selling of air conditioning units because temperatures are going to go up. And they're expecting market application of these devices to grow quite significantly. And so I think better countries like Scotland, and I think also across the UK, we will do our best to hit some of these targets. But I cannot see us hitting to 1.5 current time. It doesn't take many countries not to play part in this. And if you look at the actions across in the United States, that could really drag things backwards, which is a great, great shame. But I always live in hope. Presidents are only in office for 4 years, and common sense might return. And I think also the whole aspect of growth driven by the green economy is very significant. If you take the UK, it is growing at 10, 12, 14% per annum. That sort of beats what the forecasts are for the overall economy. So the more you can load into that side of our economy, the better. I would like to see Scotland hold to some of their better thinking around housing, for example. They had some really progressive thinking around change of ownership and making it mandatory that after 2 years of owning a new property and moving in, you had to bring it up to a certain energy efficiency standard. And they sort of backtracked a bit on that. I think those sorts of things are fundamental. All the trigger points, building a new property or trigger point of ownership, make people make a change. Otherwise, it will not happen. And I think we've all got to have that message taken upon us. So whilst the Scottish Government will have that, I think it's also down to Scottish individuals living there, wanting to do some of these things about changing how they travel, how they heat their homes, and also the consumption patterns. And the consumption pattern we've touched on a bit is textiles. No one seemed to have rattled through what the implications are of us behaving sensibly about clothing. The clothing industry employs in excess of 400 million people worldwide. It makes the car industry look insignificant when you look at number of employees. The bulk of those people are not in Western countries. And the West tends to regard those issues as that's not almost like not our problem. So from a just transition point of view, you've got to think of the third world and developing world implications for our behaviours. And at the moment, the just transition discussion tends to be localised, not international. The whole COP process is making that international, and now there are dedicated work streams. So hopefully that will start to be brought in, because the impact on some economies like Bangladesh, if we all change our clothing patterns, are absolutely phenomenal. 85% of their exports is clothing. So it's a huge impact. So yes, going back to your actual question, I think we will get there in Scotland, but they need to be a shining light to encourage others to move along as well.
Got to pull the rest along, absolutely. Okay, just looking, we have a couple of minutes left, I think. So, and one more question, I think.
Considering the future of green jobs, what would be your advice to this room of business students about to embark on their future careers?
And I think the first thing to say is good luck with your future careers. And good luck with your university careers ahead of you. I think, Michael, from my point of view, one of the things we hear more often than not is about future-proofing skills. You are learning some good skills. What you're doing now, it will incorporate or show sustainability, digital technology, AI, of course. Green finance, those kind of areas, and they're critical not just in one industry but across all industries. So don't, but they're all moving. So don't just stand still with the kind of expertise you're developing in those areas. Use lifelong learning, get involved in lifelong. It is about lifelong learning. I'm confident you will have several careers over the course of your working lives. We certainly have. You know, I started off as an engineer and then moved into IT, and then I'm doing what I'm doing now at a very least. So so keep yourself moving and keep yourself learning and future proof your skills. And the big AI question, you know, that is something to very much keep up with. We tend to use AI a lot. But we don't rely on it. It helps us make decisions. So using AI properly is going to be a big skill for the future. Michael?
I think I'll make two comments. The future is very much data driven, and the green revolution is very much data driven. So be eco-digital, please. And the second is go along to Kathrin and ask for a copy of her careers guide, because I think she's produced a very good guide for the green economy, both for careers advisors and to those people seeking a career. And I think it's a great little booklet that is very, very helpful, freely downloadable from their website.
Yeah. Oh, and I think just one further point, and that is referred to it earlier, this thing about, you know, green skills only apply to green jobs. There are green skills in every job. So for those of you who are very sustainability minded, don't necessarily lock yourself into chasing a sustainability career, you know, badged sustainability career. You can be sustainable within any job you do. There are very few jobs that don't have a green element to them these days.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and I can see a few students scribbling notes. I'm just going to ask if anyone else has got any other questions before we pass over to Kathrin. And Michael and Fraser, if you guys need to head off, we can stay on. But I know Kathrin wants to just quickly talk to the group as well whilst we're here.
That's fine. We'll keep the Zoom open, Robin, until you're finished.
Perfect. Thank you. So just any last questions in the room? All good for now. I'm sure we can send you, or they can reach out on LinkedIn with their questions. Yep, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Do
that
like,
was great.
if you subscribe to our post, do drop us a like or drop us a note if you have any comments to make.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So Kathrin, over to you. I know you wanted to speak to the group whilst we're all here together as well. Great to see you.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to share some things. So obviously Fraser and Michael have talked a lot about the bigger picture and, you know, what are green skills and what do you do, and, you know, future is data driven and future proof your skills and, you know, get involved in things. So I just wanted to share some opportunities of how you can actually get involved in sustainability related initiatives, volunteering, training programs, just so that you have something tangible to take away from the session as well. So I'm just going to share a few slides, if that's okay. I hope it works. Oh, I have to send a request there to Fraser. Okay, great. See if it works. I might just share my screen and then go into here. Do this. Okay. So hope you can see this okay. So what can you do right now to help you get a green job? So first of all, maybe I thought it might be helpful to maybe introduce myself first. So I'm Kathrin and I'm the Sustainability and Learning and Teaching Project Officer at the EUAC Scotland. So we work with colleges and universities to embed sustainability into their operations as well as their learning and teaching. And I specifically work with lecturers, for example, Romani, to support embedding sustainability in that, which is a green job. in a way. It's not necessarily, I work on a wind farm where I wear wellies, but it's still a green job because it helps us to protect the environment and move towards a more socially just system. So I just thought I might share how I got there and why it might help you to hear some of the opportunities I have for you today. So for example, for me, I graduated from uni with a really broad degree. It was an adult education for social change. That's extremely broad. What do you do with this? So I didn't really know what to do. And some of you might be in the same place once you graduate, either from college or from uni, if you're going to finish a full uni degree after this. So I got a community development job for which my volunteering experience really helped to get it. And then while I was doing that job, it was nice, but I knew I wanted something different. I joined a climate leadership program, and I'll show you this program later in my free time. And I found the job that I have now, which is essentially my dream green job, through a network that was set up as part of one of those programs. So I think sometimes you'll do something and maybe in the moment you're not quite sure where it's going to take you, but just the network that you have, not necessarily even talking to people, but just seeing what's happening can really help you find your career pathway. So what you can do now is 3 things. You can find out more about green jobs, and I'll show you very briefly the guide that Michael just mentioned. I'll show you some volunteering opportunities that are open right now, and I'll show you another training program that you can undertake. So the careers guide, as Michael said, it's free. I've sent Romani the links, but there's also a QR code that you can scan if you want. It's a free guide. It talks about the different kinds of green jobs. This is something that we've come up with based on what we see happening in the sector, where we kind of distinguish between the core green skills, as governments often define it, with this the net zero nature emergency jobs, but also the wider jobs, which include about behavior and systems change, which is probably something that you might get involved with, especially, for example, in green finance or enterprise, as you can see here. There's also jobs that make green organizations run smoothly. So, you know, like you need project management skills, for example. And then there's something that Fraser and Michael addressed as well. Every job can be a green job. You can bring in the green skills that you have into a job, even if it's not green on paper. So we talk about that in the guide if you want to find out more. It's just a little bit what it looks like. You see here at the top right, we signpost to a lot of guidance that exists. So rather than having to Google, where do I find more help on finding a green job? Hopefully our guide gives you an overview of all the resources that exist. And there's a page at the start on how to use this guide that you can click through so you don't have to read the full thing. And there's multiple pages with examples of real people doing green jobs, for example, behavior and systems change jobs. So hopefully those things will help you to find out a bit more about what you can do next. On a volunteering side, there's a couple of opportunities open right now. So for example, Teach the Future is a really brilliant campaign that's happening all over the UK, and they're currently really looking for people in Scotland to help them out as well. So they're looking for students aged 14 to 26, which probably a lot of you will fall under, who have experience with the Scottish school system. So there's a QR code there, and there's a link below if you want to check it out. Just get in touch with them if you have any questions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I did a climate leadership program that helped me to get the job I'm in now. This is 2050 Climate Group, which is a Scottish organisation of young people doing climate leadership programs for other young people. And they're currently also looking for volunteers. By the 27th April, you can apply. Typically, if you have any expenses, they're paid for. So if you need to travel for this, normally they cover that. They look for multiple different kinds of networks, so volunteers in different kinds of areas, so you'll find something that you're interested in. And if you do this, it'll help you connect with other people doing similar things. It'll help you build a network, and it might also help you to get into the program once it opens again, which typically does over the summer. And then another training opportunity and finding a community is the Force of Nature program. So Force of Nature is, again, an organization for young people that is started in the UK, but is now global. and they offer a program as well as becoming part of a community specifically around emotions around climate. I know from my own experience, and maybe you feel the same, sometimes you can feel really stuck and quite anxious about what does the future hold, and like, what does that even have to do with me? And I'm being frustrated about these things, and that's all very normal. And they like work with you to process those emotions and turn them into something useful. So their sessions are really, really open and really friendly, and you meet lots of other people. And it's all online, so it's very accessible. And once you finish the program where you join the community and you have 3 online sessions that you work through, you can join one of 3 training pathways. So you can become a facilitator with them, you can get some speaker training, or, and this might be most interesting for you as business students, you can get some consultant training on how you can work alongside businesses to advocate for sustainability. So a really, really great opportunity. It's all free, so I would recommend to check it out if you can. Once you sign up to the community, in the community, you can then join the program. That's just good to know. So the sign up right now is for the community. And once you're part of that, you can take the program. It's all free. And I think it's 18 to 35. Yeah, and I don't know if Romani, if you want to talk to the students at all about what is of interest for you, if you have any questions, if there's anything else you're looking for while you still have Fraser, Harper and me here, maybe there's something that you're like, I really need this, can you help me, or can you advocate for someone else for getting this? Just throwing the questions back to you.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I know there's a lot of interest in the room.
Great.
We're always looking for opportunities and experience, so that's great to have those resources. Thank you for sharing. Any questions just whilst we're on the call? What's the best way to get in touch with you if we do have questions afterwards?
You're talking about Kathrin or for us, Romani?
Yeah, for Kathrin.
For Kathrin.
LinkedIn or email is good with me.
Yep.
I'll post it in the chat.
Put it in the chat, Kathrin.
Share it, Romani. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, and you've all given us so many resources to get stuck into, so that's really helpful. And I know the team here will be keeping an eye on all of the Green Edge resources and subscribing, and hopefully adding you on LinkedIn and keeping up with the digest, which is a great resource. So thank you very much. It's been great having you in our class today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.